Okay, hello. Today is Tuesday, April 1, 2025. This is the regular meeting of the Town of New Canaan Town Council. For agenda item number 1, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone would please rise. Penny, would you like to lead us?
Sure. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, can we get the roll call?
Yes. Rita Bettino. Tom Butterworth.
Here.
Janet Fons.
Here.
Luke Kaufman.
Here.
Mike Morrow.
Here.
Maria Norton.
Here.
Kimberly Norton.
Here.
Hillary Ullman.
Here.
Christina Ross here. Eric Tunham.
Here.
Penny Young.
Here.
Jennifer Zonis.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 2, minutes, approval of the meeting minutes from the regular meeting held on March 13, 2025. Can I just have a motion and then second, and we'll open it up for discussion?
Second.
Yes.
All right,
sure.
Christina, you second. Discussion on the minutes for the March 13th, 2025. Any discussion, comments, questions, edits? Nothing? Okay, Tom?
That was a spelling of Steve Benko, but I'm sure that's been fixed. Great.
Awesome. Okay, and thanks again, Tom, for the work on that. So we'll take it to a vote. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, so Tucker, do we want to? In order to accommodate everyone who wants to speak, we have a pressing time issue, so we're allowing someone to go out of order. So thank you for stepping up.
Thank you for allowing me to go first. Childcare issues. My kids are pretty young, and thank you for your time. I'll indulge you with a quick story. Every weekday at 8:25 in the morning, my almost 4-year-old and my 16-month-old and I go outside on Putnam Road and we wave at the elementary school bus going by. And now that we've been doing this for so long, the bus has come to expect us. It beeps and all the kids wave. And just last week, the bus driver actually stopped the bus and asked when my daughter would be going. And I said, not this September, but next September. My daughter can't wait to go to what she calls the puppy school, because we're zoned for South. And while I'm doing everything I can to prepare her for kindergarten, I also want to make sure the 54 untenured teachers who are now working in all 3 elementary schools are also prepared. The Board of Education wants to add a classroom coach in this proposed budget, and it'll be discussed tonight as one of the possible things that might be cut if we do go through with those $300,000 worth of cuts. The Board of Education here is continuously trying to innovate and be proactive about keeping our schools high performing. And by hiring this classroom coach to help the teachers, it gives them that support. It gives them the ability to stay ahead of the curve. The classroom coach program proposed has already shown measurable impact by decreasing the transition times between lessons, which is leading to more instruction time for our students. The cuts that the town council are proposing would hinder us from providing our teachers with the professional support that they all need and deserve. In the end, I believe this would directly affect our students and their outcomes. So I support the current budget without any further cuts. Thank you again for your time.
I'm sorry, I don't recall getting your name and address. This is just for the record. We do?
I do.
Awesome, thanks. Sorry about that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll move on to agenda item number 3, budget overview, review and discussion of proposed town budget for fiscal year 2026, including a review of the health department proposed budget.
Your co-host, Jess, you should be good to go.
I guess we'll find out, right? Can you pull it up? Just go to the last 2 slides. We'll just skip the beginning.
I apologize, my voice, I'm not feeling that great. Don't worry, it's nothing contagious, it's just a sinus infection.
How ironic.
Yeah. So here's the overall budget for full-time salaries. My 3 full-time staff are union, so they get a 2.75 COLA raise. Part-time, there's a reduction. Dr. Reed, our medical director, retired. When he retired, we did a salary study of the area and lowered that salary for our new medical director, who's a New Canaan resident, Dr. Jamie Roskowski. There's no other real big changes to it. There's a reduction to the overtime, and then some incidental changes to, equipment, hand tools. Overall, it's pretty much flat. It's down 0.04%. And then on the revenue side, it's up over 8%, 8.37%. We didn't have a full year in OpenGov to go, a fiscal year in OpenGov to know the real impact of it, but I had a year's worth of data, November to November. So what I said to Todd and the Board of Finance was, I'd like to be more modest with the increase because I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. And next year, we will have a full year in OpenGov fiscal year to get a more refined look, but I'm comfortable with these increases to the revenue at this point, because as you can see by the year to date, we're almost at 100% in all of them. The salons and the trucks don't get done till May and June. That's why those are not at where they need to be yet. But overall, we're flat and revenue's up.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah. Short and sweet. I know they're all here to see me, so.
Everyone go home.
You have everything you need, Jen? You feel like you're well covered and
Yeah, we're good to go. And there's been a lot of concern about, what everyone's reading in the paper, federal grants. All those grants are pretty much already utilized, so that's not an issue. And they stopped issuing grants under the last administration. So, and we don't get per capita from the state because the governor is also cutting public health by 10%, but we don't have 50,000 residents. So again, so it's one time it's kind of good that we don't rely on those funding streams. So.
Great. Any questions, comments, or anything else for Jen?
Just that you do a great job, just lean and mean and, well done with all that.
Thank you. We try.
Awesome, Jen. Knocking it out of the park as usual. Seriously, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we're all set. So we have no other departments presenting. I think that's it, right? So I think we can move on to public hearing and then we'll do our overall budget and update review. Sound good, everybody?
I have a list here of speakers.
Sure. So we'll move on to agenda item number 4, public hearing. Members of the public are welcome to speak to the town council on the proposed fiscal year 2025-2026 town budget. Speakers are requested to provide their name and street address, and comments will be limited to 2 to 3 minutes, subject to the total number of speakers.
Ronna Van Vagel and Josh Kay is next up.
Good evening, members of the Town Council and community members. My name is Ronna Van Vagel. I am honored to speak tonight as the president of New Canaan Teachers Union. Behind me, I also have quite a few teachers who represent the leadership from our union. As educators, our responsibility is to provide the highest quality education for our students, ensuring they have access to the resources, programs, and support necessary for their success. The budget currently before us reflects a commitment to that mission, and I urge this council to support it without reductions. Throughout these meetings, we have heard about the thoughtful approach our district takes, balancing financial responsibility with the needs of our students. We have seen evidence of strong programs in athletics and the arts, continued investment in AP courses, and an unwavering dedication to student safety and academic achievement. We've also heard that teachers consistently seek coaching and support, crucial investments that directly enhance the quality of instruction in our classrooms. Additionally, while some may question staffing levels, the reality is that our educators are facing increasing demands. From addressing learning issues to supporting students' mental health, the work of our teachers, coaches, and support staff has never been more vital. Reductions would only undermine our ability to meet these challenges head on. Our students deserve a budget that prioritizes their education, not one that forces them to make do with less. This budget is an investment in their future and in the future of our community. I urge the council to approve it in full without reductions so that we can continue to provide the excellence in education that our students, families, and community expect and deserve.
Could I
Thank you.
ask, are you resident of New Canaan?
I am not.
Okay, next up.
And Lee Boyle will be next.
Good evening, I'm Josh Kay. I live at 927 Silvermine Road. And I wanted to speak to you this evening as a New Canaan taxpayer and as a dad of 2 elementary school kids. New Canaanites expect and deserve a school budget that's targeted towards the needs of our students and makes good use of our tax dollars. And the Board of Ed and our administration has done that with the budget that's before you. The reason I'm so confident that's the case is by looking at the roles that wouldn't be funded or potentially wouldn't be funded as a consequence of the reductions that you're considering. These roles, the high school math interventionist and elementary classroom coach, are targeted at our school's core academic missions. There's no fluff here. And as a father of 2 students at East School, I wanted to talk in particular about the classroom coach position. We have a lot of new teachers in our elementary school. There are 54 elementary teachers in this academic year that are in their first few years of teaching. That number is up from 31 new teachers in the 21 to 22 academic year. That's an increase of almost 75%. So for my son, who's a 3rd grader at East School, 3 of the 4 teachers that he's had so far at East have been new teachers. And let me be perfectly clear. Our administration does a tremendous job of hiring teachers from great programs with enthusiasm and energy, and our kids are really lucky to have them. But the one thing those teachers can't bring is years of experience in the classroom. And for elementary school in particular, those years can be very important, in particular for classroom management. So that's what the coach position is for, helping teachers effectively run classrooms. And that yields direct results, for example, in reducing transition times between subjects. By just cutting a few minutes out of each of those transitions over the course of a day and over the course of a week, it can add up to hours of additional instructional time for our kids. These classroom teachers these classroom coaches help create a learning environment that's absolutely crucial, especially during the elementary school years, and that continues on for the rest of the time that our students are in the New Canaan Public Schools. These positions are money well spent. So the temptation may be to say, wait for these teachers to get more years of experience, wait for the budget to have more room next year or something else. But the kids who are in elementary school now, this is their shot, right? 2nd graders now aren't going to be 2nd graders again. So waiting isn't really an option for them. So our administration and our Board of Ed has done a great job of crafting a narrow, tight, focused budget. I urge you to prioritize our schools and students over a reduction that would largely be symbolic. Please approve the budget as presented. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Town Council. My name's Lee. I live on Silvermine Road as well. I felt compelled to speak tonight for a number of the reasons that other people have cited tonight and at last week's meeting. We moved here for the schools. I have a son entering kindergarten this fall at East and a daughter 2 years behind him. So elementary school is top of mind. And it's also a whole new world to me. So I'm learning what I can. And also this forum is certainly new to me as well. So thanks for bearing with me. My professional background, though, is in human resources, including areas like staffing and training for organizations. So I wanted to share a couple thoughts tonight from that perspective. Ultimately, my bottom line is I want to encourage Town Council to approve the proposed Board of Education budget as is. But one of the reasons for that being, my thing is that if it is cut, one of the positions at stake is a dedicated classroom coach for the 3 elementary schools. So echoing what Josh was saying, someone whose role it would be to continuously develop and support teachers and optimize the learning environment for our students. And in my career, I've regularly partnered with business leaders to make a case for investing in learning and development for their employees. Responsible spending is important. I know that. So that those business cases always have to tie to the bottom line, right? How is spending now going to benefit the company down the road? What's the risk of not making that investment in learning? And while we are obviously not talking about a for-profit organization in this case, it does strike me that we are talking about investing in teachers, and really the product here is so much more important than any good or service, because we're talking about kids here in New Canaan and their outcomes. And to me, that's the clearest case that I can think of. I also just want to add that generally speaking, supporting employee development is directly correlated with higher engagement, performance, retention, meaning successful teachers who stick around. That's good for our teachers, it's good for our students, and it's also good for our budget. So all that's to say, I support the current budget without any cuts, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Is it just Stockcoper? That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Yush Stahlkoper, and I live at 131 Millport Avenue. I'm a parent and a member of this community. I'm speaking on behalf of the library budget today. So we moved here about 4 years ago, and like many other families, our children have benefited from all the different activities and the books and the space of the new library. It's a place that we frequent regularly. About a year ago, I left my job, the corporate world actually of 20 years, because I wanted to dedicate my support to my neurodivergent son full time. And one of the things that I discovered in the past 4 years where we've been navigating this journey is that there's a gap of support for parents who have neurodivergent children. So my son is twice exceptional, which means he's gifted with co-occurring challenges. And he's incredible and amazing, but he's often misunderstood. And one of the hardest parts being a parent to a child like that is that we also are misunderstood. And we don't really have the support system in place to be able to ensure that they get the support they need. So about a year ago, after I left my job, I started thinking about how can I help other parents who are navigating a similar journey. So I reached out to Rebecca Fox, and she and her team not only said yes to my idea of building a support system for these parents, but they supported me throughout this whole process. They helped me with my idea, and they encouraged me and gave me flexibility and gave me a beautiful space. So now those sessions have transformed into monthly support sessions for parents who have twice exceptional children like mine. And it's become a space of connection, a place of belonging, a place where we share and support each other. And I've actually heard quite a few parents say this has been life-changing. And this space is a space where I go where I don't have to explain myself and people understand me. And all of that has been made possible because of the library. as a grassroots nonprofit that I'm starting, I didn't have any funds or resources or space. And so the library has just been so generous and such a crucial part of the success of creating the support system for parents who really need it the most. And so, you know, supporting these children is our responsibility. And I wouldn't be able to do this without having the library that goes above and beyond to support all of my efforts. And my mission ultimately is to build a world that is neuro-inclusive, that celebrates our differences. And it wouldn't be possible without the library. And so I ask you to please approve the library budget, because that way they can continue to do the work of impacting a lot of different lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter Ryan. More into the mic. It's Amanda Martocchio.
Just to all the speakers, if you just pull that microphone as close as possible to stuff for TV land to hear you and us.
Good evening. Hello to the members of the town council. Great opportunity to be here. My name is Peter Ryan. My wife Renee and I live at 61 Sherwood Lane on the west side of town of New Canaan. And I'm here to talk about the library budget as well. Big shoes to step into after that last share. You know, we moved to New Canaan about 2 years ago, almost to the day. And shortly after the new library opened, and it's sparkling and an amazing space that's run by amazing people. And we have a now almost 3-year-old daughter, and we are there very frequently. And I think what I would say is that the library plays an integral role in the fabric of life in New Canaan. I think it welcomes more residents and more people on a daily basis than any other space, at least public space here in town. And in that way, the staff of the library are almost unofficial ambassadors for the town. And they both encourage many children through programs and through unofficial kind of time just in the hallways and in the children's section that gives kids confidence. It helps them learn, helps them build social bonds, things that are really hard to teach young children. And we're very lucky to have such a great staff. I'd also note that the library, as was just mentioned, is the largest kind of public space, most traffic space here in town. And it allows so many different types of programming. I could fill all my time with just listing all the different types of programs that are held there, either sponsored by the library and put on by the staff, or independent groups. And that creates a space for building the social fabric of this town that is so special, unlike anywhere else in town. And lastly, I view it at our education, Board of Education, and their budget is very important. And our school system is incredible and top of the heap, if not just in the state. Maybe, I'd put us up against any town in the country. But the library is really an extension of that. And I understand that they're separate organizations, but they're both centers of learning for our youth. And that's really what sets New Canaan apart. So with that, I would just like to say, they've hosted a great number of events that are open to the public, amazing authors, incredible speakers, all worthy things to spend time on. You could basically have your whole social life at the library. So anyway, with that, I'll wrap up. I'm just asking that we approve the library's budget without reduction, and thank you for your time.
Amanda Martocchio. And Polly Metz is on deck. And if anybody online who would like to speak, please raise your virtual hand and we'll call on you once the speakers in person have spoken.
Good evening, Town Council. My name is Amanda Martocchio, and I live at 189 Brushy Ridge Road. I'm here to support the New Canaan Library budget and ask that you pass the budget as proposed without reduction. Our family, who has been living here for more than 20 years, has been actively engaged in the library and has benefited directly from the exceptional quality, diversity, and inclusive nature of its programming. Most significantly, the library has been a regular destination for our special needs daughter, Julia, and has had a profound impact on her quality of life. Whether arriving just to pick up a book and check out what's happening on that given day, the library staff has always welcomed her enthusiastically. The library offers several programs designed for special needs community in mind, and these have given Julia a precious opportunity for continued education, enjoyment of the arts, and socialization with her peers. The many delightful offerings that have benefited Julia this past year include an adaptive circus called Circus Moves and the unique series offered by Concordia Conservatory. Recently, Rebecca Fox, who you already have heard about, and her colleagues have designed an in-house program for special needs children called Peaceful Pages and Playful Minds. More broadly, the family programming at the library is always inclusive in nature and has provided a community experience that we can enjoy along with Julia. For example, not just for kids, offered through the Norwalk Symphony, reading and rhythm, offered through Orchestra Lumos and Music Together, as well as the family concerts offered through New Canaan Chamber Music, just to name a few. We are lucky to have such an excellent library and its programming and services in a new beautiful building that I was lucky to sit on the building committee for. And we have more than 1,000 members helping to provide this beautiful facility through exceptional philanthropy. As a voter and a taxpayer, I think it's important to pass a budget this year that fully supports this vital community resource, which benefits hundreds of New Canaanites. Thank you very much.
And Julia Coniglio is on deck.
Good evening. Hello, my name is Polly Metz, and I live at 773 Silvermine Road. I've been an educator for over 2 decades, working in Darien and Wilton, and in that time, I've always had a pulse on the Board of Ed budget in the town in which I work. I've had 8 years of experience as a parent with children in New Canaan Public Schools, and I really have not, until this year, paid much attention to the budget. I moved here for the schools. I have always had full faith in the schools. Dr. Lutzy has proven, to my mind, that the administration and the Board of Education develop a budget that is both fiscally sound and meets the needs of my children and their classmates. It is my understanding that this year the Town Council would like the Board of Education to cut the 2025-2026 budget by an additional $300,000. This would mean potentially cutting a new position of the high school math interventionist and additional elementary classroom coach. The Board of Education unanimously vote at their January 21st meeting to add these 2 positions, and I know that they are very thorough whenever adding anything to their budget. I suspect they did so because a high school math interventionist works with the children of our neighbors, or perhaps our own children, who struggle the most with math. This might be because they moved from another town that used different math curriculum and they have gaps in their knowledge. They might have had extenuating circumstances that caused them to miss a big chunk of learning earlier in their school careers, or math might just be the subject that doesn't come easily to them. But I think we all agree that we want all students who graduate from New Canaan High School to have a sound footing in their math abilities, and that is the role that the math interventionist would fill. The elementary classroom coach's role has an impact on every student in the elementary schools through any aspect of the day, including but not limited to the level of discussions in classrooms, the differentiation to meet the needs of all students, and the fine-tuning of the amount of time on task for our students. This one position has the potential to improve learning for nearly 1,500 of our children and our neighbors' children. If I break it down into very rough numbers, these 2 positions, which would approximately be the $300,000 that would be cut, would cost each household in New Canaan around $42, based on the estimate of there being 7,116 households in our town. $42 for a family. I see that as a bargain, considering the amount of students that would be affected by these positions. I bet that if we each went home and talked to our neighbors, the majority of our town would pay an additional $42 of our tax money to the most important investment in this town. I hope we can pass the budget as it is with no reduction. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you.
Julia Caniglio. And Michael Telesco is on deck.
Good evening, Town Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Julia Caniglio. I live at 373 Greenlee Road, and I am currently a junior at St. Luke's School in New Canaan. I'm speaking to you in support of this year's New Canaan Library budget and ask you to pass the budget as proposed without reduction. I have been volunteering at the library for 2.5 years, and it is one of my favorite places in town. Growing up, the library was, again, one of my favorite places to visit. I was very shy as a kid, and I really loved escaping to books, and the library always provided a place of solace. And then volunteering at the library gave me firsthand insight into not only the incredible programs that we all know the library offers, but also how much work and effort goes into planning the successful execution of these programs. But what I found as I was observing volunteering is it's not just the big events that make the library truly special. It is the little moments that create these real connections. Moments like seeing toddlers chasing each other around in the children's section and students meeting together to finish a group project for school, or old friends catching up over coffee at the Farmer's Grind Cafe. These seemingly small interactions are what make the library such an important part of our town, as it creates a genuine sense of community. And I think this aspect of the library is something that isn't really offered at any other public institution in New Canaan. And it creates this sense of community and connection in a world in which both are increasingly difficult to come by as we transition into an age of phones and computers and technology. And overall, I just think the New Canaan Library is more than just a building. It is a vital part of our community, a place dedicated to learning, creativity, and connection. I hope you will ensure its continued success by fully funding its budget. Thank you.
And Karen Willett, you ready, please?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with all of us today. My name is Michael Telesco. I live on 113 Southwood Drive, and I'm a junior at New Canaan High School. I'm speaking today to express my strong support for the library's budget to be improved in full. Our library is an important part of our community, opening the doors of knowledge, culture, and learning opportunities to every generation. It is a safe and comfortable place for individuals and families to be, offering a range of resources that help create a sense of well-being for our residents. As a child growing up in this town, the library was part of my everyday life. My sister and I spent hours there, reading, attending story time and music sessions, learning how to solve a Rubik's Cube. In fact, if anyone knew me years ago, I practically lived in the library's print space, where I spent so much time with the 3D printers that the librarians probably considered charging me rent. But most importantly, I was discovering new interests along the way, new passions, new curiosities, things that, as I reflect upon now, have shaped the way I think today. I've also been privileged enough to help others by organizing family activities like Stargaze events and workshops within the makerspace, where kids could learn about their creativity. Cutting back on the library's budget will directly impact its ability to deliver such programs, and thus those opportunities for all of us kids. Our library is more than just books. It is local education and social relationships. I urge you all to think about how much value the library brings when considering budget choices. Thank you so much all for your time.
Paul will be next. Sorry, my mic.
Hello. Karen Willett, 60 Springwater Lane. I'm here to speak in support of fully funding the Board of Education's budget. While rising headcount, I think, is obviously worth scrutinizing, I'm satisfied that this budget has been questioned and scrutinized by the members of the Board of Education over several months. And some of those guys have a deeper understanding of our schools than probably anyone in town, including, I think, an understanding of what taxpayers expect. And all of them have agreed that this year's proposed headcount is important. So in my position, actually, these new positions are a good illustration of why we all live here in New Canaan and in a town, want to live in a town like this where residents are willing to fully fund what's necessary to send our kids to one of the best school districts in the country. Because a well-resourced system gives us the ability to continuously improve things and not just keep doing the same thing every year. So as residents, I think we expect Dr. Letzi and his team to always be identifying areas that can be improved, and then piloting evidence-based solutions to any problems that he sees, and then come to us, the taxpayers, and ask us to fund the successful solutions. And that's what they've done in this case. So these new headcount are for, people have described it already, but one is a high school math interventionist, which can increase student math scores and also probably allow some students to take a higher level of math than they might otherwise have been able to. And then the elementary classroom coach, which will boost the performance of newer teachers. So both of these are expected to have an immediate and quantifiable impact on student achievement. So in my opinion, the administration is doing exactly what we expect them to do. So I hope you'll decide to fully fund this year's budget so the schools can implement these thoughtful solutions. And I hope in the future we'll continue to expect and support innovation in our schools. Thank you.
And Sabrina Portland Stunts is next.
Good evening, Tim Klumpel, 109 Benedict Hill Road. I'm a parent of 3 kids in the Canaan schools, a taxpayer, and in the interest of transparency, the elected chair of the Democratic Town Committee. In that capacity, I represent about 4,000 residents. I want to thank the chair and the council for having this process and doing the work that you've done throughout the year. I have followed the discussions of this body about taking away an additional $300,000 from the school district's proposed operating budget for next year. It seems to have been established that the amount under debate is not enough to make a meaningful difference to taxpayers. Yet it will reduce the funds available to the district for it to execute its programs that have delivered us the top schools in the state. Based on the historical data that have been discussed around return funds, this reduction would also put the schools at needless risk of having to come back to town government for a special appropriation, which might sound simple in concept, but would assuredly not be a good look for anyone, and certainly not for New Canaan. As you know and have heard, our public schools are a major attraction of our town, if not the primary attraction. They are our economic engine, our competitive advantage, and the crown jewel of our community. They are the reason why families have and continue to live here. And when compared with rising costs, you've seen that the school district has fantastically delivered and earned your trust. I heard it said here that from the taxpayer's perspective, the more money that comes out of this budget, the better. From a property owner's perspective, that is not true. As an investor in New Canaan's future, it's not true. As a member of this community, it's not true. In the eyes of our valued educators, of course, that is not the case. As the council weighs its decision about a further reduction, I think it's important to step back and ask yourselves, is this what people want? Gauging from public feedback, I believe the clear answer is no. I respectfully urge the council to fully fund the school's budget as presented. Thank you.
And Tara Menon is next.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sabrina Pormond Stunts. I live at 203 Brushy Ridge Road. And I want to take a moment to thank all of you for being stewards of this community. It is a volunteer position, as I understand it. And so when I think about what is in your capable hands and what has been built here over the years, I humbly have some thoughts because I'm new to this community. We moved here just a little less than 3 years ago. The three things that attracted us to this community were one, of course, the public schools, two, the library, and three, the affordable housing community that you folks worked to build. What that demonstrated to my husband and I was that this council, this community stretches itself to do what so many communities are unable to do in this country. This is a bastion of true community, of democracy, of working across political lines, and I thank you for that. When I think about the library, one of the things that was so exciting to us was this was a community-funded initiative when so many communities are banning books. That said to my husband and I that this was a place where we could come and truly grow as a family and grow as people. When we looked at the educational system and saw that the affordable housing was right across the street, we thought, this council understands what's necessary to actually be able to provide those who don't have funds for the type of proximity to their needs. They can walk to town. I worked for Habitat for Humanity for 5 years. I understand the transportation challenges that are in front of folks who don't have enough funding for themselves. With that said, what I believe is that you have had to stretch then to do all of those things. I understand the fiscal responsibility that is at your fingertips, and that's no small thing to do. And what I ask is that we actually stretch again, because this community supports you in doing that, to go ahead and fully fund the library and fully fund the school district as proposed. Thank you.
Tara Menon. Will be after Tara.
Good evening. My name is Tara Menon, and I live on 126 Jellicoe Mill Road. I'm currently a senior at New Canaan High School, and it is an honor to speak with you today about the importance of funding the New Canaan Library, because since my childhood, the library has played an integral part of my life. To many high schoolers, the library is simply a place to do homework or cram for a test the night before, but to me, it has been so much more. It's where I discovered the power of community and what makes our small town so special. Working as a children's room shelver, I have interacted with young children and parents that I might not have otherwise met, radiating their excitement as they pick out new books, attend storytime sessions, or participate in library programs. These moments have shown me how the library is a place that brings people together, fosters connections, and creates a sense of belonging for all ages. Last January, I shared my idea with none other than Rebecca Fox, the library's manager of family and community engagement, my idea of a town-wide talent show. She was incredibly supportive, and together we brought that vision to life. The event was a huge success, with parents reaching out in hopes of the event becoming an annual occurrence. I can proudly say that this May, the library will be hosting the second annual talent show. Seeing the impact of this event inspired me to do more. I wanted to create something that celebrated the many cultures within our town, so I proposed a World Cultures Fair. Families from diverse backgrounds set up tables in the library's auditorium, sharing traditional clothing, food, and stories from their heritage. With nearly 70 attendees, it was another great success. And I share this with you not to explain my impact on the community, but rather the impact the community has had on me. The library is not just a place where people go to check out books. It's a space that fosters creativity, curiosity, and connection. Without it, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to organize these community events that have brought people together in such meaningful ways. I am deeply grateful for the role the library has played in my life, and I hope the town recognizes its value by approving the library budget in full. This funding will not only support future events, but will continue to strengthen the bonds that make New Canaan such a vibrant community. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Saya Sukani is after Rebecca.
Hey, hi, my name is Rebecca Fox. very humbled and embarrassed by how many times I was mentioned, but I live at 161 Heritage Hill Road in New Canaan. I'm also the manager of family and community engagement at the library. I grew up in New Canaan, went through the New Canaan public schools, have family in town, and I'm now a New Canaan homeowner here. I'm here to ask today that you approve the library's proposed budget in full as a library staff member, but also as a 37-year member of the New Canaan community. Growing up in New Canaan, the library was one of the first really central places in my life. It was the place that I walked to with my grandmother, came after my parents got out of work to check out books. And what really stood out to me all those years was the way the librarians connected with every member of the community and really took the time to help everyone achieve whatever they were looking to in the library space. And that's been really the core of what I try to do at the library as well. I see my role as connecting with community members and helping them to achieve whatever their own goals are. It's just a real honor and joy to have the opportunity to help New Canaanites accomplish what they're setting out to do. And that looks really different for every person. For one new mother, it's coming to baby story time and meeting someone else who's in that same just beginning of parenthood. For somebody else, it's developing the adaptive story time and giving them the chance to bring their child to the library when maybe they thought that wasn't a space that they'd have access to. It's working with teens and taking those ideas, like students who have been taking art classes and just really want to have a way to teach others, and walking them through the process of what does it look like to teach a class and develop a class and let them lead their own classes for students. It's giving community members the chances to develop and lead their own programs, which sometimes turn into their own nonprofits like Yush did. It's working with dozens of other nonprofits in town and supporting them in kind of co-hosting lectures, bringing in professional speakers, and just making programs available that sometimes just need a venue, sometimes need guidance, but otherwise wouldn't be available to the community members. And it's giving students their first volunteer opportunities, their first jobs, and writing tons of college recommendations and tons of job recommendations and setting them on the path for continued growth. And we do all of this with a lot of passion and a lot of frugality, and really drawing on as many community resources as possible and using our own creativity. And we have a closet full of cardboard that we use for all the craft programs. We really do everything we can to save. We negotiate costs whenever possible. And we'll continue to do that no matter the budget. But craft supplies and bringing in expert presenters and just keeping the lights on do all require adequate budget as well. And the work that we do in the library really does have a ripple effect throughout New Canaan and beyond. And I'm really grateful to be a small part of it. And I really hope that you'll approve the library's budget so that we can continue to help all New Canaanites achieve what they're setting out to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aya Sukani and Lauren Connolly Nussbaum will be right after Saya.
Hello, good evening, council members. I'm Sia Sakani. I'm a resident of New Canaan for the past decade. I currently live on 38 Oak Grove Place. I have spent a majority of my time in New Canaan at the library, whether it be the old one or the new one now. And I have loved libraries since I was a child. There's something truly special about the quiet place that they provide, where books can open up new worlds, offer comfort, and allow us to explore countless ideas. Over the years, the importance of libraries in my life has only grown. In fact, our library has turned into much more than just a place to check out books. It's become a hub for the community, offering a place for everyone, no matter the age or the interests. As a student, I have experienced firsthand how our library has been an invaluable resource. It's not just a quiet place to study or to check out the latest novel. It's where we gather for study groups and participate in new activities that challenge our worldview. I can speak on behalf of many of New Canaan High School's students when I say that the library plays a crucial role in our academic success and personal growth. It's a place that encourages curiosity. It provides immediate access to updated resources and fosters a connection within our community. So this is why I'm asking this council to please approve the library's budget in full this year. Thank you.
Will be Jeremy Stewart and Schubert and Sarah Schubert.
Good evening, Lauren Connolly Nussbaum, 65 Whiffle Tree Lane. I am a 13-year resident homeowner taxpayer of New Canaan. My husband, Matt, and I have a high school student, a middle school student, and an elementary school student. And our elementary school student receives significant special education support. Among the many awesome things she is autistic and requires a lot of help to get through the school day. Her name is Grace. She has adjourned to the hallway because, as she says, you grown-ups talk so much. Now, I know, Mike, you run a tight meeting. I'm going to keep it really to the minute, but I call Grace Amazing Grace. And there are many reasons that I call her that. A lot of those reasons are sitting behind me right now, teachers and administrators of the New Canaan public school system. So, lest you think I am just here to pull on your heartstrings, you are wrong. I have attended or watched virtually every meeting of the New Canaan Board of Education in this 24-25 cycle. I have followed the budget closely. I have watched our terrific Board of Ed members go back into committee and talk and discuss and question the budget that Superintendent Lutzy put forward. I have watched them in live time and in between meetings. I've had wonderful discussions with some of them, and I've heard how they have gone piece by piece, line by line, and they were able to cut somewhere in the order of $125,000 from their capital projects budget, which was remarkable. They were able to find ways to make this budget as lean as they possibly could while still delivering a remarkable product. So I want to wrap up quickly, and I'm going to go back to the heartstrings, so bear with me here. When our daughter Grace was diagnosed as being an autistic person 8 years ago, my husband and I didn't know what to do. What was our next move? And that was when New Canaan Public Schools stepped in and they lit the path. The people behind me light the path for the future of our town. So I'm asking you tonight, and I'm going to borrow the words of a former chairwoman of our Board of Education, a person I admire deeply, who said, "It is vital that we lead forward." I ask you tonight to lead forward by approving the Board of Education's budget in full and without reduction. Thank you all.
Jeremy Schubert.
Good evening. My name is Jeremy Schubert, and I live at 569 Brookside Road. As a junior at the high school, I have nothing but respect for Dr. Lutzy, and I believe that we should trust his and the board's judgment. New Canaan is known nationally for our school system, and I'd like to think that this would continue. Cutting hundreds of thousands of dollars, which would likely mean cutting the 2 new positions, would keep our school system stagnant instead of improving. From my perspective, the math position would have an incredible impact. It's the most commonly struggled with subject, and we've seen scores drop nationally due to the fallout from COVID. The math interventionist position would help resolve these issues. For For these reasons, I strongly support the current budget without cuts. Thank you.
Thank you.
And after Sarah will be Claire Ayub.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Carl Schubert, and I live at 569 Brookside Road. Thank you for your service and for having us all here tonight. I'm going to probably bullet point and go really fast since you've been listening to everyone. I'm very grateful for all of your time and energy and effort. My husband and I are proud New Canaan High School alumni. We have 4 children. 2 have graduated and 2 are currently in it, including my son who just spoke. I'm a former teacher, well-versed in budgets. I've given most of my 14 years back in town here to the New Canaan Public Schools, volunteering and in our community. I fully support the school budget as it stands. Dr. Lutzy has annually improved his extensive and transparent budget. When I first arrived in town, that was not the case. He's worked very hard every year, along with his cabinet and Board of Ed, to have a very factual budget without any fluff. You all know approximately 85% of that budget is pre-negotiated, right? It's benefits and it's salaries. So that's actually not even determined to what should be discussed. So 15% of the budget is left for all of the things, all these extras that nearly every family moved to New Canaan for. It's what makes New Canaan Public School System so special. And that 15% makes up all of the services and programs that meet the needs of all of our students. The Board of Ed presented a tight budget. It's already been cut by $300,000. Last week, your discussions further cited that the Board of Finance wanted to cut $500,000 to $700,000 based on past 10 years. Living in the past is irrelevant to now, but one of you pointed out, thankfully, that 2 of the years are COVID years, so they're irrelevant, right? That we need to remove them. So there's 8 years left. The actual figure that leaves would be $434,907. If it's already been cut by $300,000, that leaves $134,907. No figure above this should be discussed to being cut because it's irrelevant and it's including COVID years that have no bearing. So I fully support the budget as it stands and want that to be approved. By approving the budget as it shows a true partnership amongst all the town bodies and boards and a high level of regard you have for Dr. Lutzy and his cabinet and Board of Ed with their due diligence of our district. And the budget would be able to provide the services and programs needed for all of our children. And most importantly, it shows the town's support of our most valuable and vulnerable, our youth. Thank you very much.
There will be Ryan Bullinger.
Good evening, everybody. It's my true pleasure to speak on behalf of the library tonight. My name is Claire Ayub, 186 Middle Ridge Road. Shout out to Hoyt Farm. I'm the writer and director of the feature Empire Waist, which is a movie about teens learning to love their bodies through fashion. I specialize in working with teens, young adults on body image, self-confidence, psychology, all that great stuff. Also, my production company has always been and is based in New Canaan. So you guys, our address is on a lot of contracts. So all great stuff. As a direct witness of the impact the New Canaan Library is having on our community members of all ages, I am here in strong support of this year's New Canaan Library budget and ask you to pass the budget as proposed without reduction. I know so many people have talked tonight about the children's library, the children's part of it, which is incredible. I'm here tonight to talk about the teens and tweens, as we've had students here talk tonight. Seeing these areas that are specifically created for tweens and teens to be able to develop relationships, to talk to each other, especially after losing time during COVID, to socialize and also just have a safe space outside of home, outside of the school. Seeing that impact for me, I do work in the morning at the library and I clear out by 2 because man, it gets crazy. And in the best way, I see teens come in who are excited to be there, right? They're excited to spend time with their friends, to work together, to build those relationships. And as someone who grew up up here, someone who used that library, seeing it used so beautifully in the space this town has built, it's actually something I talk about in my travels across the country and around the world, especially when I talk to libraries looking to advance their programming, advance, construction. I point and send them to our library. So I just want to say thank you to the library for all they do. Thank you for what you're doing, and please pass the budget without reductions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Phil Hogan.
Good evening to you all. I'm Ryan Bollinger at 23 Kelly Green. I'm a senior at New Canaan High School. I previously spoke at last Tuesday's meeting in concern of potential additional cuts to the fiscal year 2026 BOE budget. I feel that it's incredibly important as a student, even as a senior graduating this year, to speak up for those younger than me who may miss out on opportunities should the budget be cut further. From what I've gathered after the last few meetings, members of the town council are seeking an additional $300,000 cut, which, according to Dr. Lutzy, will likely affect two specific programs throughout our school system. The first and most important of these programs is the addition of a full-time math center interventionist available for drop-in appointments to give help on homework, tests, and classwork to students of all levels. This interventionist would also be able to join classrooms to help students more effectively understand and absorb complex material. So far this year, the Math Center interventionist was piloted during the first semester and proved to be, quote, highly successful, in Dr. Lutzy's words. I can say confidently from my own personal experience that this concept has the potential to be an absolute game changer for many students. At the high school level, we place a very high emphasis on achievement and challenging our students to take the most difficult courses available to them. I, like many others, tried to take the most advanced math classes I could in my first years of high school, and I have to admit, I really struggled to keep up with the material. I used my teachers as a resource as much as I could. However, teachers have their own schedules, and worried about getting a ride to school early in the morning or missing a sports practice after school only added to my stress, which is where I think the Math Center interventionist could really make a difference for students of all abilities, no matter what their level is in math. I would have benefited enormously from Math Center interventionists during my first years in high school, which is why I hope the town council considers keeping the budget as is so we don't ruin this opportunity for our younger learners. I understand completely where the town council is coming from and wanting to create the leanest budget possible and cutting back on, quote, administrative costs without affecting students. But let me be crystal clear here. These programs are not administrative costs at all, and cutting them will inevitably in turn affect the experience that students like me and people younger than me will have. Throwing away these programs on the principle of fiscal conservatism doesn't quite make sense to me as a student, and I'm no expert in the field of finance or taxes at all. But from what I understand, these cuts would add an absolute maximum yield of likely $10 or $15 savings for our taxpayers. I know for a fact that almost any parent in this town, many of whom pay hundreds of dollars for tutors for their students, would be willing to throw away $10 or $15 to pay that premium if it means that their child or anyone else at the school gets another wonderful educational opportunity when they go to school. Let's think straight for a moment and not pass up this wonderful opportunity. Thank you guys so much for your time and your service, and I trust all of you guys to do the right thing here tonight and when you vote on Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Phil Hogan, 50 Old Studio Road. Last Thursday's town council discussion on the time value of money was a fascinating one. Taxpayer money in the right places at precisely the right time is a seductive idea, a principled idea. And if the special appropriation process was as simple as Dr. Lutzy calling up Deanna, Todd Lavieri, and Mike and saying we need another $300,000, I'd be rowing in the boat alongside you guys. But it's not a simple process. It's a complicated one. And more problematically, it's a noisy one. And it starts with a terrible and misleading premise that the crown jewel of our town, the schools, have mismanaged their funds. Now, I know all of us here will know that won't be true, but the lion's share of people who don't pay attention to this stuff won't. And I can see those terrible, terrible headlines now in the New Canaanite and the Sentinel, the Darien Times, maybe even the Post. Downstream from those headlines, where do individual Board of Ed members go to get their personal reputations back? How about Dr. Lutzy? Can anyone tell me what the career prospects are for a superintendent who mismanaged funds? What about all the families who are considering moving to New Canaan and see that negative headline? Do you think they might reconsider and move somewhere else? What happens to property values if the pipeline of people who want to move here dries up? How will you explain to taxpayers that you saved them 10 or 20 bucks one year, but took their property values 10 or 20%? The fact of the matter is, we're in blood from a stone territory in purchase services, transportation, and just about every other bucket in this budget. We can change assumptions regarding turnover savings or the ISF health account, but that too is a risky proposition. Those assumptions could very well be wrong, which would lead Dr. Lutzy and the board scrambling at fiscal year end. Cutting the budget and going down this path only makes sense if it leads to a materially better result for taxpayers and families. Not only will that not be the case here, but the collective risk this elected body is taking with the town's schools and its sterling reputation is incalculable. Any marginal gains derived from this cut pale in comparison to the amount of long-term damage that can be done to this town's reputation. Thank you guys, and thank you for your service.
Else in the room that wants to speak? If not, we'll go to some people on Zoom. Okay. Please let us know your name.
I'm Jennifer Ellis, 73 Thrush Lane. I'm back. Hi. Thank you for your time. I have a little bit to say about the Board of Ed budget. As I said last week, I moved to New Canaan nearly 4 years ago with my husband and 2 young daughters, one of whom is now in kindergarten. Of course, schools were top of mind when we made this choice. I didn't choose this town because it simply met the basic educational needs of my children. I chose it because our school system goes above and beyond and truly invests in education. Right now, I understand that some aspects of the budget are under debate, and if it's not passed as proposed, 2 key positions may be cut from Dr. Lutzy's plan. One of those positions is a math interventionist, which is particularly concerning. I understand they help keep our kids get ahead, but they would also allow those struggling to get the help they need. If this role is eliminated, we risk leaving our most vulnerable students without the critical support they need to succeed. Reducing resources for interventions sends a message that it's okay for some students to fall behind, and I don't believe that's the message we want to send as a community. I've also had the privilege of seeing the current teaching coach in action at a parent-teacher conference event. I deeply value her approach to conflict resolution in the classroom. It's an approach that I believe all of our teachers should have access to. And I trust she has other valuable teachings to help our teachers thrive. I support adding a second coach, given the 54 new hires. One of my largest concerns as the mother of a 3-year-old is also that we have a record number of students coming into our schools when she enters kindergarten, largely due to the influx of young families during the pandemic, and we have to invest in our teachers now. This is crucial not only for teachers' professional development, but also to ensure they're equipped to handle the challenges that come with larger classes that are coming. This investment in our educators' knowledge and skills will directly benefit my daughters and all of our children. An exceptional school system starts with exceptional teachers. And I believe that the 2 new roles Dr. Lutzy is proposing are essential to maintaining our competitive edge and ensuring the continued excellence of New Canaan schools. While I'm not an expert in finance or education, I am a mother and taxpayer who trusts Dr. Lutzy's expertise. With a decade of experience in making New Canaan schools some of the best in the country, I trust his judgment and the Board of Education's ability to maintain necessary checks and balances. I urge you to pass the proposed budget without cuts, especially to the crucial positions that support our most vulnerable students. Thank you.
Jane Benton on Zoom, and if anybody else on Zoom would like to speak, please raise your virtual hand. You're good to go, Jane.
Hi, okay?
Yep.
Okay, hi, I'm Jane Benton. I'm 106 Adams Lane. I'm a 23-year veteran or 23-year resident here in New Canaan. I want to thank everybody that's there tonight and listening to all of us and taking us into consideration in this decision. I just wanted to very quickly insert some comments about the current budget. I have one child that's gone through from kindergarten all the way through the NCPS system, is now in college, and one that is also started in kindergarten, gone all the way through the system as a current high school junior. My high school junior is is a very active math student and does do a lot of extra help. The math interventionist would be an incredible resource, especially because of the drop-in component. Staying after school doesn't always work for a lot of kids with after-school activities, especially sports. And from just an overall perspective, I just wanted to say that for my college son, when he arrived at college, he felt very well prepared for college, and I really credit that to the New Canaan Public Schools, to Dr. Litzy. I sat through many of his budget discussions, and I just wholeheartedly support and trust his judgment, and would ask that you approve the budget as it's submitted. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see any other hands unless I'm missing anybody on Zoom. I think that completes the public hearing.
Great. Okay. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 5, overall budget update and review, further review, follow-up and discussion by the town council. At this point, so we'll open it up for our general discussion, but I'll make a few kind of introductory points just to kind of move things along. We had a meeting last Thursday, which is online. Everyone can kind of go to the town website and check it out to watch the discussion. And one thing that I had asked the council members prior to that meeting was show up on Thursday with any proposed motions to reduce any of the department budgets throughout the town, whether it be Board of Ed, Library, Police, Department of Public Works. So last Thursday at the meeting, we only had one proposed budget reduction motion. We had no others. And that was the reduction, a proposed reduction for the Board of Ed's budget of $3,000, a reduction of $3,000. There were no other proposed motions that night. I want to ask now, are there any additional proposed motions to reduce anything, including the library? Does anyone have that motion or will intend on making such motion on Thursday, this coming Thursday? All right, that's what I thought. So for the library, we're clear. There is zero proposed budget reduction to the library. That budget will, it's going to pass. Your proposed request will pass. There are options, okay? Certainly appreciate everyone who spoke tonight. It's not easy. I mean, I speak in public all the time, but some are better or more, less anxious than others. So for all those who spoke out for the library, thank you for coming. And of course, for everyone who came for the Board of Ed's budget as well, thank you for coming. So I just wanted to get that out in the open. So all the library folk, you don't have to stay here if you don't want to. So anyone else who, yes.
Need to put my adder in it.
Yeah, go right ahead. Penny, please.
The only thing I'd like to add to the library.
Library folk.
Hold on.
Mark,
wait.
just one moment, please. I said something too quickly.
As I discussed at our past meeting about the library budget, because we all think of the library as just the library, it is a totally new entity in the breadth and expansiveness of the library programs. And I have suggested that in the next 6 months, we form a committee with the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, Town Council, and the library, headed by Mark Dwelly and Doug Stewart, who are the liaisons to the Board of Trustees, and really do a deep dive into the budget, see whether or not we, the town bodies, are on target with the amount and degree of support of the library, just so we know we're going forward in the right direction and have justified, everything the library needs, and we can provide the taxpayers.
Okay, great. Penny, that's it? Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you and thank you. Okay, so moving on, the only proposed motion that will be made on this coming Thursday will be the reduction of the $300,000 from the Board of Education request. So again, last week, I'll reference it again, we had quite a long discussion about the various council members, thinking on a proposed motion of that nature. We also had the benefit of having Dr. Lutzy present that evening, and he spoke, and it was new to him, so he was just starting to think about the potential impact should such a motion pass. So I categorize it as a good discussion to have. I think it was as thorough as we could have that evening. I certainly wanted everyone to kind of speak their mind and give their thoughts. And obviously, there's been some organizing, and that's awesome. That's what makes our community great, and I love it that word was out and people had noticed to come and marshal their support and organize and come forward tonight and speak to us. It means a lot to us. We also do receive a lot of emails. We received a lot of emails for various budgets, mostly the library and the Board of Education. We care deeply about every word that's said to us in an email, every word that's said to us to our faces here. We are a small community. We do respect each other. We do disagree. On this panel, I don't know, you may not be able to know who the Republicans and the Democrats are. And I think in a nation where everyone's kind of at each other's throats in that regard, Hillary and I, we disagree on a lot of things, but I think the world of her, and we're very, cordial and professional to each other. We disagree, but that's okay. So I just want everyone to know that, it's not so much this party line kind of thing going on up here. It really isn't. So with that said, also just with respect to who you're looking at, and some of you may not seen us before or know our names, and we were not like rolling around like rock stars in the community and like, oh my God, let me get your autograph, Mike Morrow, like who cares? But yeah, exactly. And we're crushing it here with our salaries. But, just so you can understand, we're all people from the community. We have lawyers, unfortunately, people in finance. We have people from social services. We have an architect. We have people from the corporate world. And we have serious people, very smart, very thoughtful, and people who deeply care about this community. We may get to the destination a little bit differently, but we all essentially arrive at the same destination. And I think all of us have or currently have children in the school district. So any decision that we make, it has impact. I have children in the school district, and many of us here do. So I want all of you to know that any decision we make is very carefully considered. It's also balanced against a pool of money in the town. There's a finite amount of taxpayer money, and we have to be very careful with it. And every department comes to us saying essentially the same thing. Police comes in saying, we can no longer have these firearms. They need to be replaced. The vehicles need to be replaced. We can't get to an emergency scene. Fire department comes to us saying our oxygen tanks now have expired. We can't have crappy oxygen tanks, and we can't breathe in a fire. We have Tiger coming to us saying we have streets that have to get paved. We have bridges to replace. We have all these things that have to get done. We have the Department of Justice was looking at us because we had ADA problems with some of our town buildings, and that costs money and it costs lawyers to pay. And so there's always a compelling reason to spend money on something in this town. And that includes the Board of Ed. And many of you parents and the same that are up here, and I'll stop yammering in a second. I moved here also for the school district. My wife and I both work. We're killing ourselves to be in this town. We could have moved to other towns. We chose this one for a variety of reasons. So please understand that certainly when I make a decision about what I think is the most appropriate for the entire balance of this town, it's really carefully considered. I never look at I've spoken Dr. Lutzy's praises a million times. It's on the record. He kills it. We're blessed to have him. He works 24/7. He's a real genius at what he does. So I give him all the credit in the world. I give the Board of Ed an extraordinary amount of credit. The Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, they scrub these budgets down to the brass tacks. And I think for the town council, and I say this all the time, we defer tremendously to the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, our department heads, because they are the experts in these matters. But the people you're looking at are the only ones that are actually voted by the entirety of the town and given statutory authority to say yes or no to any penny. So we have to be careful and good stewards of that money for all of our needs. And sometimes I think that gets lost in it. And the last point, especially with the Board of Ed budget, I make this point all of the time, and this is in no way to diminish the expertise, the experience of Dr. Lutzy, the Board of Ed, his C-suite, the teachers, certified, non-certified. A major component of performance rests with the parents and the home. And that's an unquantifiable measure or data point about how much that impacts a student's outcome. And that's, I think, gets lost in the discussion about the strength of the school's performance here. You know, I said this last week, you know, I get home late, my wife gets home late, but we're like, did you do your homework? Let's, you know, and if they have a problem, I sit down, it's 10 at night and I'm working with them. So there's a big component of performance in our town that's attributed directly to the parents. So I don't want that to get lost, where if we do reduce the overall ask by some amount, that there can be, I don't want to say a substitute for it, but I just don't want to lose fact of how important it is for the performance based to the parents' effort and input. So those are my general comments to our discussion here. And again, I would certainly invite all of you to look at our discussion from last Thursday, but I'll open up again. I'd like to hear from Dr. Lutzy and the chairman, Hugo Alves, for their input on this proposed reduction, because that's what we're here for. And that will be the only motion on the floor next Thursday. So with that said, I'll open it up to maybe comments from the council, and then maybe we could bring up Dr. Lutzy. And so Eric, you want to start?
Hi. I just want to say that as someone who is a product of New Canaan Public Schools and whose children attended New Canaan Public Schools, I am a 100% strong supporter of New Canaan Public Schools. And Dr. Lutzy has a fabulous team, and the teachers are wonderful, and the outcomes are wonderful. But I want to, and I want to make perfectly clear that no one on this town council has ever suggested specific cuts of the math interventionist or the classroom coach. What we are talking about is a reduction in the size of the increase to the BOE budget in order to bring it in line with what was recommended by the Board of Finance and not accomplished through the Board of Finance process. That is what we're talking about doing here. And I just want to run you through some numbers, and please bear with me. It has been spoken about that over the past 10 years, the total amount returned by the Board of Ed to the town has been $6,898,062. That's what Dr. Lutzy told us. In essence, over 10 years, that's unused budget by the Board of Ed that was returned back to the town. That's fiscal responsibility. That's good. So the average over 10 years is 689,000. There were 2 years in there, COVID, where 1 year was 2 million plus, 1 year was 1 million plus. So that's 3,479,263. Let's take those out because those are outlier years. And we have 8 years where the average comes out to be 434,908. There was also an outlier year where the number was 0. We could take that number out and divide by 7, and the number would come up much closer to 500,000. If we just look at the last 2 years, 1,139,594 was returned to the town. That's an average over the last 2 years of just under $570,000 of unused budget, for which the taxpayers were taxed and was not spent. Now it comes back the year after that, but that happens every year if we continue to do that. So the principle we've talked about here is not charging taxpayers for money that we're not going to spend. The Board of Education budget was reduced by $300,000 through the Board of Finance process. Board of Education requested what they asked for, what Board of Finance said, was they sought an increase in the budget of below 4%. They wanted a 3 handle, so 3.99% or lower, which would keep it in line with or closer to the rest of the town budget and much closer to inflation than the 4.67% increase initially requested by the Board of Education. Through the Board of Finance, the increase was reduced to a 4.40% increase. So we stand now with a budget approved by the Board of Finance at $113,947,171. The rest of the town budget, if you take out the Board of Education, the total town budget excluding Board of Education was approved by the Board of Finance up from 65,787,431 to 67,208,207. That's an increase of $1,420,776 or 2.16%, well below inflation, well below the Board of Ed. Some departments have lower budget requests this year. Some have higher. Most have stayed well under inflation. And I believe what the Board of Finance was requesting of the Board of Ed was to get their budget request more in line with inflation, other town departments, and get close to under 4%. That didn't happen. So what the town council is suggesting is that an additional reduction of the increase, and let me be perfectly clear again, no one up here is advocating a cut to the Board of Education budget from last year. We are all in favor of an increase in the Board of Education budget from last year. We're in favor of an increase closer to 4% than 4.5%. That's just not, that's where we're struggling. If the total town budget were to appreciate at the rates we're talking about for the Board of Education, the current town budget as presented to us from Board of Finance is $181,155,478. If it goes up at the rate, the historical rate of inflation for the last 10 years, 2.87%, if it goes up for the next 10 years at that rate, the total town budget would be $240,402,439, which would result in an increase for each of the 7,116 households of $8,325 in taxes. So we're not talking about $15 or $20. We're talking about a long-term impact of something higher than a 3 to 4% increase in a budget. And that's under 3%. If the total town budget goes up at 3% per year for the next 10 years, that'll be $8,755 per household. If it goes up at 4.4% per year, the total town budget, if the total town budget goes up at 4.4% a year for the next 10 years, which is what the Board of Education is asking us to approve, that would mean an increase in taxes for each household of $13,701 in the 10th year. If it goes up at the originally requested 4.67% increase, that would be $14,725. So there are a lot of numbers that we have to consider. We were elected and we are the town body that is responsible for ordinances and for appropriations. We are responsible for spending the taxpayers' dollars in the best way possible. And I hear from a lot of other constituents and taxpayers, other than the ones who have passionately pleaded with us not to do anything at this point. So I hear from a lot of people, and I have looked at the numbers, I would suggest, more deeply than many of the people who have pled passionately. And I respect and understand your position. I'm asking you to understand ours, which is to protect and be responsible for the taxpayers' spending. That's what we are trying to do. We are trying to continue the suggestion proffered by the Board of Finance to get in line with a closer to a 3% than a 4% increase. But we're not even coming up to that yet, but we're trying to move in that direction with this consideration and this proposal. I think that's all I need to say, and thanks for your listening.
Thank you, Eric. Rita, did you have your hand up? Or is it not up anymore? So I don't know.
I know I did. It keeps going away. I don't know why it does.
Janet.
I'm not sure if it's appropriate to look at the Board of Education the same way as the town. I mean, the Board of Education is that's our crown jewel. I mean, that's where we're investing in, right? And we see that they've managed to increase their costs at a lower rate than inflation, correct? So I'm not sure that's the correct measurement to look at, to say it's just, and we need to increase it at the same as the rest. of the town. And also, we need to be investing in our schools, right? I mean, as Dr. Lutzy said, you keep on making that analogy, how the world is changing and that the rate, and it's a calculus analogy that makes my head hurt. But anyway, we have to invest. And these two positions are the positions that are necessary. And I actually need a direct answer as well as to whether or not this decrease is going to affect these two positions in particular, because that's not clear, but we can get clarity on that. Well, but Eric, I understand what you're coming from. I just have a different view on looking at the BOE as the same as the other town budgets.
I think I also agree the BOE is the crown jewel. The schools are the crown jewel. They're the main reason people move to town. They're the main reason our property values stay where they are. And it's a wonderful institution and organization and outcomes. You can't argue with the outcomes. All I'm saying is that if the Board of Education budget continues to outpace all the other town departments at the rate we're seeing, 10 years from now, we're going to find ourselves in a very
The
difficult,
surplus actually
very
goes back
difficult
to
position.
the general fund, correct? The surplus that we give back, that the BOE gives back, goes back to the general fund, correct? So that actually offsets.
I don't know
the-
exactly how it's accounted for, but it essentially comes back to the town, yes.
Can I jump in on that, Janet? Like, so this is just a question, and apologies for my math, and I did take math at New Canaan High School. I thought I was doing really well, but maybe with an intervention, I would have been better with this. But in all sincerity, can you tell me when you were saying those numbers that over 10 years and you got to the point of the 14,000, how does that take into account money going back into the general fund from the give back? Does that include, did you make those calculations also taking that into consideration?
It doesn't take that into consideration. Well, all I'm trying to point out is that if you look at the math of a total town budget growing at the rate that the Board of Education wants its budget to grow this year, we will find ourselves, I don't know if it's untenable. I mean, the level of income in this town may increase, the property values may increase. 90% of the residents may have no problem paying another $14,000 a year in taxes. That may happen. All I'm saying is that if you do the simple math, these are the kind of things that we're going to end up looking at, and we need to think about that.
No, and I respect that, but is it, how does that equation that you came up with, and maybe, Anne, this is something that you can explain, but that how do you factor that in for the taxpayer over time with the money that goes back into the general fund because you're doing a drawdown the next year? Or you're factoring something into the money that Dr. Lutzy and the board have been putting back in. So does that not need to be accounted in this discussion?
It'll go back in budget of using the fund balance. And then the problem ensues that we have a fund balance that's increasing while our budget is increasing.
Yeah. So
BOE expenses are going up lower than the rate of inflation, correct? Which
What
means
is that?
The expenses are, am I getting that wrong? That's what I've been hearing.
my calculations of the compound annual growth rate of the BOE budget shows a compound annual growth rate of 3.02%, which was quoted in at least one email that came over 10 years, Sean O'Keefe gave me a number of, I think, 2.46%. I've asked for, pardon me? 2.46, because inflation is 2.87, and the claim was that the CAGR, compound annual growth rate of the school's budget over 10 years was lower than inflation. My contention, based on my calculations, is that it's higher. I've asked for a discussion on that, and Sean and I will have a conversation about that at some point.
So
By something on this point, if it's as important as it seems to be. Sean O'Keefe's calculation is looking at actual expenditures. It goes back from the fiscal year 2024 back, because that's where we have actual expenditures. So it's the actual dollars. And if if you calculate it based on this year, with this year's budget included, or even next year's proposed, you don't have actual dollars. So he wanted to make sure that he was using actuals consistently across. I think, Eric, that's the difference. when we
Yeah,
look at
I'm-
these.
I'm-
I think it's that straightforward, that you're not using those actuals in all of your
Okay.
calculations.
And
And
I've-
Sean, just in order to be consistent and to apply, sort of accurate methodology in his approach, he wanted to be sure that each year was using the actual expended dollars. So it was the approved budget less whatever we ended at to get to the net budget. And that's why that is why in his calculation, why there's difference.
Yeah.
So you're using a different base. He's
And
using
he's
that.
at-
So when he gives that number, that's the actual increase in what we spent over those 10-year periods. And it is, that couple ticks below the
Yeah, and
inflation.
we've had communication, Sean and I have had communication back and forth, and we'll sit down at some point
Right,
and
but he
he'll
and I
probably,
spoke,
he'll
he
probably get
written
me
it up.
to his numbers because he's got the actual numbers in front of him. I don't have the actual numbers. in
Right,
front of me.
and if we're gonna, talk about what we've spent and whether or not it's below or above inflation, I think you need
Okay,
to look
so
at the
you-
actuals.
Let's say you're at 2.46, 2.5%. That's still well below a requested increase of 4.67. And that's what I'm saying. We as the town council are charged with trying to understand and assess and be responsible to taxpayers for defending when we vote in favor of something.
Sure, yeah, and as we spoke, again, I don't want to sort of make this, well, the inflation conversation is an important one. Over the last 2 years, I believe 2 years ago, the inflation was at 8%, give or take. And in last year, it was 4 point something. I don't have the numbers right in front of me. I can grab them.
Yeah.
But they're on that same chart. So in those years, we were well below inflation. So as we've talked about, inflation with a district budget is a lagging impact because we approve our budget well before we know what that inflation is going to be. So we are trying to moderate, of course, and well, we'll leave it at that.
Hold on, guys, let me just say one thing, Hillary. This is awesome. We'll let this conversation roll. I just kind of have to keep it orderly. So one thing is, don't talk over each other. Just say your piece. Other person responds, and just try to bring me into it so I can call on you. Because I have people up on Zoom. 2 council members are appearing via Zoom. It's a little bit harder for them. Hillary, go.
Okay, 2 things. I think, Eric, your conversation with Dr. Lutzy and Sean proves sort of the point. If we want to look at this on a 10-year perspective, that's a conversation that needs to happen outside of an annual budget request for the next year. That this is a long-term conversation. And I don't know how an additional reduction to their ask of $300,000, $300,000, excuse me, how that moves the needle in that direction necessarily. And secondly, while we have you guys here, I think this inflation discussion is a really interesting one, but for those of us who aren't finance people, it's kind of like, well, wait, I have kids in the school and I just want to make sure that they're taken care of. So just divorcing it from the hard numbers, which are totally appreciated, and I really appreciate all that work. What will need to go if we reduce the budget by $300,000? That is something we need to know. Is it the 2 positions? I've heard that there's an extra turnover allowance, which by my math would mean you're counting on a net turnover of 15 or more full-time employees. So that would mean tenured people leaving, non-tenured people may be coming in to replace them, but then you would still have to lose. That's a significant amount of turnover, guys. And if they don't achieve that, the budget cushion, so to speak, let's pretend it's a budget cushion, because I'm fine with you guys having a cushion, frankly, so let's not beat around the bush here. That budget cushion could be eviscerated. And then are you firing people? I mean, can we talk really about what this is? Because I think that keeping up with inflation and what does it mean, brass tacks, if we were to do an additional reduction?
I have to start by saying we don't build in a budget cushion.
No, I know.
Okay.
I'm saying I
I
would
have
be
to
okay
start
with
there
that.
only because, as we go through this again, and you very well articulated, I think the whole council and Mike certainly, that this budget has been carefully scrubbed, again and again by many, many people. So that's, I have to.
No, I get
I
it.
know.
And
So to your
listen,
question.
Given that the people who serve on the Board of Ed on a voluntary basis and are elected
Mhm.
have liability if you overspend it, I'm just saying, I don't think there's a cushion necessarily. I would not be averse to that idea. So that's all I'm saying. But I'd
I'm
love
grateful
to
for
know,
that,
but I just want to
but we don't have one.
for the benefit of the people here, everyone here and us,
Understood.
most importantly, what's on the table here?
Sure. So as you know, so the process for the council is tonight's discussion and then vote on Thursday.
Yeah.
We have a Board of Education meeting on Monday. And at that meeting, then we have the budget, we have the final number, and we're able to have the discussion. And so what I'm intending to do, if the council does reduce the 300,000, is to recommend to the Board of Education that we do not fill those two positions. So we don't hire the math interventionist or the classroom coach. It's a challenging thing. Certainly listening to everyone tonight, I agree wholeheartedly. And clearly they've been paying close attention. And I guess I still know how to teach a little bit. I'm very proud of all of you for understanding all the positive impacts in those positions. And we would circle back to those in our next budget cycle, because that's sometimes what we have to do. The remaining funds, we would look at, you're correct again about turnover savings, but there's also possibility of some attrition as we're looking across certified and non-certified. Our goal would be to hit that number, whatever that ultimately where that lands. And then if we're not able to hit that number, then we do have to look at freezing different parts of our budget or delaying certain things in order to make sure we hit that number.
And when would you have to make those decisions by?
We have a good sense of things once school year gets up and running. Like mid-September, we start to really understand once the hiring is complete. We really don't know. There are unknowns in a budget, right? We anticipate our staffing needs, certainly at our elementary, based on our enrollment projections. And we're looking at them, and they are, you see in this budget, there are no enrollment variability adjustments. In past years, we've had a couple of FTE here and there, positive or negative, for enrollment variability adjustments. We did not build that in this year. So if you want to use the word cushion, when we do build that in, no, I'm kidding. But when we do build that in, it's because we are at a certain place with our classroom sizes at the elementaries that may just looks like they're going to break over the guidelines, but we don't know where. So we put them in as a floating 1 or 2 where we can, or the opposite. Looks like we might be able to save. We don't know where. This year we don't have any of that because of the way that those projections come in. So there are other variables out there that we won't know till we know. Those numbers could be higher. Those numbers could be lower, and maybe we don't have to hire as many as we need. So that's why it really takes mid-September once the school year gets started, because that's the bulk of our hiring at that point is done, because our classes are up and running and we've got teachers and kids and what have you. So.
And I just want to say for the record too, I didn't receive a single email, nor have I gotten any comments on anybody who supports any reduction in your ask. So I wanted to just say that. Now I might be, I have younger kids, and I have a child in the school system, and so that might be just a part of my environment. But I've not heard from a single taxpayer.
One.
Oh, I've heard from one. Well, I don't even know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But yes, so there is one taxpayer I've heard from. So I've just had a different experience than Eric, but he and I, would probably run in different circles and come in contact with different people. I wish I had heard, from anyone.
I'm old.
No, you're not. I'm old. I'm an older parent, so don't worry. Anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. I know Rita's been waiting. patiently,
Rita.
so.
No, it's okay. No worries. I apologize. I can't be there. I'm actually traveling. I didn't think I was actually going to make it. So I actually prepared a statement to give to Jen. I'm going to read off of it a little bit. First off, I just, Eric, I think you've done such a great job. Can everyone hear me, by the way?
Yes.
Okay. Eric, I think you've done a really good job digging into the numbers and getting down to the nitty gritty. And I think you've been really diligent in all of that. And I also want to applaud Dr. Letzi and the Board of Ed and all their due diligence. And the way I approached it this year, I have to say, I did the digging in, but I also wanted to take a step back as well at the bigger picture. And, last year, as you well know, I did support a reduction in the proposed budget increase because I was concerned. I was concerned about a significant increase in headcount, despite, flat to declining enrollment, especially in a year where families were feeling the weight of inflation. And at that time, I believed it was the right decision to ensure fiscal responsibility, but also while providing for our schools. This year, I come to the process with a slightly different perspective than I did last year, because I think this year is unique. Budgets are not just numbers, they're definitely a reflection of our priorities in the community. And while I understand the rationale and acknowledge that I understand the rationale behind the proposed $300,000 reduction. And I acknowledge that in pure dollars, it's relatively small, a small percentage of the overall budget. I just think we need to step back and consider the bigger picture again. So from Brendan Hayes' analysis, and I know it's slightly different than yours, Eric, and it kind of supports what you were saying, Dr. Lutzi, it's shown that when we account for end of year give back, so at the end of the day, what's actually spent, the Board of Ed budget really has not grown beyond the rate of inflation over the past 10 years. And that tells me something. That tells me that the school administration has been responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars, that they're ensuring what's allocated is truly needed, and that they return the rest. And much of the increased headcount over the years, especially with regard to special ed, with maintenance, for instance, it's led to a more efficient spend, and they can prove that. And so, there's other digging in that I kind of went into this year. In a time also when trust in institutions is being challenged at the federal level, I really believe it's super important to demonstrate confidence in the local leaders who've shown fiscal discipline, I think, year after year. And additionally, while, Dr. Lutzi, you say you don't necessarily anticipate immediate local impacts from these federal budget cuts, I believe having that small, you call it a cushion, call it a buffer, I don't know what you want to call it, in place is actually prudent, given this year, should unexpected challenges arise. So for these reasons, for the reasons I just said, taking that step back, looking at that bigger picture and the other things that are going on, I'm inclined to support the budget as it's been.
Thanks, Rita.
proposed.
Sorry. Thank you. Who wants to go next? Thomas.
Well, I hope you all know that Eric and I are fast friends. And I respect everybody on the town council that's looking out after taxpayers. And I think that the 300,000 is actually an exercise in restraint, because we've had what I'll call budget hawks in the past that have gone far deeper into the meat of the matter than Eric is suggesting. But I want to respond to some of Eric's points point by point. First of all, I think the last thing that Eric said was, yes, I know we're having a discussion and we're disagreeing about 10-year averages, but I want to talk about the current year being above the current year's inflation. But wait a minute. I think the point of 10 years versus 1 year is, do we have an administration that is focused on fiscal responsibility? And you would never look at just 1 year to know that answer to that question. You have to look over a period of time, and we're pretty much hitting it out of the park. So the fact that 1 year is ahead of 1 year's inflation to me means nothing, especially because on this issue of what the nightmare of what the overall nut could be in 10, 15, 20 years. Keep in mind that right now, this year, what's on the table right now is $300,000. That's about, you can calculate it differently, but for a fairly typical taxpayer that pays $20,000 a year in taxes, that's $33. Now you can project $33 out for 5 years or 10 years or 100 years, and it's not going to be a lot of money. It starts with $33. So this $33 is not going to be what's going to break the integrity of New Canaan in the future. This point about the Board of Finance wanted X dollars. In my experience, the Board of Finance, especially under its current chair, and I'm giving him a compliment, they're not shy about accomplishing what they want. They are tough as nuts. But one of the things, and so the idea that we're telling them, guys, you wanted X and you weren't able to accomplish it because you're kind of weaklings, we're tough. We're going to accomplish what you wanted to accomplish but couldn't. That's not what they want to hear. I think what they want to hear is that we accomplished exactly what we wanted to accomplish, which is to float a goal and find out whether within that goal there was a way to accomplish some savings consistent with the integrity and the quality of the schools. And they stopped. They accepted the explanation, and they took that and they approved the budget. They didn't disapprove it. They didn't deny it. They approved it. So it's not our job to be motivated by what the Board of Finance opening position was in their negotiations. It's kind of silly. The surplus, what's left at the end of the year? This is a big red herring. It's irrelevant to the budget process, okay? It's what falls out at the end from a random array of a million variables. The point is, on day one, the Board of Education has to lock into a budget and identify the funding behind that budget. That is their philosophy. You could argue that another Board of Ed doesn't have, might not do that, but ours does, and it's fiscally responsible to do that. So let's talk about the surplus at the end. But however, if the surplus was important, let's say somehow it's relevant. The issue on the table is if we take $300,000 and take it out of, give it to taxpayers on day one, well, then at the end of the year, it's not available to be given to taxpayers as an advantage to that subsequent year's taxation. The difference between giving them that on day one and giving them that on day one of the following year is about $1.20 per taxpayer per year. So this idea of this magic and moving forward the surplus or using it somehow, it just doesn't make any sense. And I think that it's really important to me to note that we're talking about cutting core services. It's one thing to have a philosophy that says, you know, find administrative savings, but the important thing is let's focus on who actually does the budget. It's the people in this room. They're not going to take $300,000 and sort of put it over here and say, find administrative savings. That's not the way it works. What they're really going to do is what they say they're going to do, which is to cut these two positions. And one of the reasons it's credible that they would do that, it's consistent with what they've always said, the way they run their business, is that it's much easier to remove from the budget somebody that hasn't been hired yet than it is to cut people that are already on the budget. It's easier to remove a program that doesn't exist yet than it is to remove one that already exists. So I take this idea that we're cutting core services here very seriously. And I'm not sure, my last point is, I'm absolutely convinced, to Hillary's point, this is not what our taxpayers want. This is not what our residents want. We did a survey in 2020. We had a huge response, statistically relevant, everything valid about it. And the overwhelming message in there is the taxpayers were satisfied with the services they got for their money. They thought it was a bargain to live in New Canaan. And the last thing they wanted to do was to cut the school budget. As a matter of fact, 27% said, given the choice, they'd increase the school budget. So this idea that we're sitting here trying to figure out, you know, protecting taxpayers from themselves, they don't need protecting. They know what they want. And only one person has contacted us and saying, you better cut the budgets, even if it means you better cut my taxes, you know, the growth in my taxes, even if it means cutting something in the school budget. We've only heard that from one person. So it's not what taxpayers want. Thank you very much.
Okay, who wants to go next? Oh, well, everyone's got a voice here.
I just have one other comment though, because Mike, you brought up this excellent point about parents, you know, we have the best parents in this district, but let's not forget we have the best administration and teachers, right? I mean, we're all equal partners here. You guys do an amazing job. You know, I mean, your commitment, I mean, your care for our students, your professionalism. I mean, that's why we have the #1 school district, right? So I just want that acknowledged.
Maria.
Well, I kind of find it offensive to reduce a, $4 million overage to a cup of coffee. Like I'm thinking of this from if you take out the outliers, the money that's been taxed, that's left over, it's real money, it's taxpayer money. And I just keep thinking of this from the view of the taxpayer who is putting this money into this fund because they're overages that for whatever reason, and I think is the reason that the overage exists mostly turnover, or are there other amounts in there, say for the last 2 years? What did that overage represent?
I think Tom did say it well. I mean, it's all of those lines as we scrub through all of them, and we're always transferring here and there to make sure everything balances out at zero. And then it's just that net at the end. So as we talked about, for instance, things, maybe some savings we didn't anticipate, like a grant for the propane that gives us an additional 20,000 here. And then there's other expenditures like the kiln that is going to cost us another 25,000. So there's always, the challenge is, a budget is an itemized list of anticipated expenditures, right? But it's an itemized estimate. It's the best we can do, when we do it. But it's all of those 8 different objects that we have.
So
and
my
everything
point
else.
is to take that, 7 million, pull out the outliers, like that's not a cup of coffee. That's real money. I mean, what I would like to see is, I know we talked about this at one meeting, is having some kind of efficiency type audit, someone to come through and see with all the new positions that we've had, the different roles, how roles have changed over the last 10 years. Is there some duplication of effort? Are there things that we don't need the schools to do because we have great programs in town? That's not for us to say. So, I tend to support the cut because I feel like with a little pressure, you find those things internally. And I'm not recommending, we can't recommend cutting positions, but that's why you get the big bucks. You have to figure that out.
So sorry.
Jennifer.
So not to keep, replaying it, but when you say, and to your point, right, like, I think when you're talking about, you first had 4 million and then 7 million, and you said that's real money. But my understanding is that it's money that total is money that did come back. It's not that the taxpayers paid it and never got it back, unless somebody can tell me that I have got my math completely wrong. And so my only comment is I'm more inclined, Maria, to, because you just said, oh, with a little pressure, you couldn't find it. My philosophy would be, because they're doing such a good job in delivering, and we heard from this eloquent young man who would like to have that help with the math, which might be a crucial thing in the marketplace that we live in right now, to have those STEM skills. I'd rather not put the pressure on you in the front end of it. Like that would be my philosophy.
So Maria, you're saying that you think that the district can find 300,000 in administrative costs or shared services?
Maybe. I
Maybe?
mean,
So that's what
we
you
don't
think.
dig in enough to know.
Right, but that's the
Um,
implication.
That's if we can.
Right, we can't.
We can't, right, so that's
The question. you
Right,
know?
contracted
Right.
services. I mean, we just don't know. So
We do
that's
know,
the,
because
that's the
we've asked
job,
them.
that's the job of the Board of Ed, not us. So I'm not going to.
And we've asked them what would be impacted by a $300,000 reduction. And it's not those things you just mentioned. It is the 2 proposed positions and accounting for some in turnover and anticipated turnover. What's your usual turnover rate in a year?
It varies.
Average.
When we looked back, there were everything from, well, we hired 51 new teachers this year, right? We had that, I think it was 51, right? Maybe, was it 54 or 51? 54, okay. So that was a large year. So we anticipate a smaller year this year because the turnover is driven in part by retirement. So that can happen in waves. When we look back on retirements, it was everywhere from 3 to 15 in a given year. And then there's other, attrition and turnover that happens. So it's hard to know. We've got in hand now, I think we have 7 or 8 retirements. The Social Security did change with the, now teachers are in Connecticut are eligible for Social Security. So that may incentivize a couple more to go who are waiting to hit a certain number. But again, it's all assumptions. It's all risk-based assumptions that we work within.
Board of Ed member here, fortunately, because everybody was talking about us. I just want to clarify a couple things. To Jen's point, the $7 million back, like, thanks for doing that. And you're all very welcome, I guess.
Yeah.
That's money back in your pockets, right? We could be net neutral at the end of the year and somehow manage to spend down to the penny. That person that's been emailing you and everybody else, Hillary, might actually have some ground to stand on if we were actually spending to the penny, because then there might be some wondering out there, like, how is that possible? How could they predict 12 to 18 months and have absolutely nothing left over every time? So we don't want to plan for that. Never mind the personal liability that I've been losing sleep since Mike made that comment last week. And I do want to clarify too. I just want to, because Eric, my gridiron brother, I love you and you're smart. But when you do research and then like you get up here and it sounds awesome and it sounds accurate, but then we find out that it's not entirely accurate. And then I go out to a historical society appreciation cocktail party last week, and I have 3 people come up to me and say, "Hey, so tell me, we added 350 people over the last 10 years to the Board of Ed staff? Like, this is what people hear in our community. We have to be very, very careful, like what goes out there, because that was completely inaccurate, which, and you admitted it after the fact, but that was after like a 7-minute grandstand of this is what you guys did for 10 years. And I've got the research, but it wasn't accurate. And we just went through another one of those exact experiences where you said that it was 3.07. It was actually not. It ended up being like, what, 2.46 when we take out the $500,000, as Jen mentioned. So facts do matter. I appreciate the research, but I think that there's a lot of people running around town with a false pretense that I just want to make sure that they're not running around with. That said, you guys have a job to do. I don't envy the job and I respect what you're doing, but I do want to make sure that we are all operating from the same place and the same understanding. That's all.
I have a question. Did the Board
Can
of
I
Ed
just
cut the
respond?
budget? Did the Board of Ed cut the budget before it came to the selectmen?
No, we added those 2 positions.
So during the entire process of the elected Board of Ed members, someone said 125 was cut in capital, but was there anything cut in operating? Because in the past, we've gotten probably over 100 questions from the Board of Ed, and they've been, we've been able to read all the questions that were asked of the budget. So did that process?
Yeah, this year we had 2 workshops. So when we came on 4 years ago, there were no workshops. We added a workshop, then we added a second workshop. And we feel very strongly that this is a super efficiently run board, and we felt very confident in what they put forth.
Yeah, I'm just kind of surprised that there's been no operational cuts from the Board of Ed. That's the part that really perplexes me. I'm going to let Eric respond, and then I have a few more comments.
Yeah, I just want to say, Hugo, thank you for pointing out. The data that I had when I asserted a 44% increase in headcount was the data that I found online available through the New Canaan Public Schools website. I didn't know that I would have to look in the Board of Education minutes to look back to find the most recent staff utilization report on the New Canaan Public Schools website is 2019-20. And if you want something earlier, it says go to the town clerk. I asked the town clerk and she said, I don't have it. You got to go to the Board of Ed. So it's taken me a while to find, and I will admit right now, I was mistaken in my total headcount number in 10 years ago. And as Dr. Lutzy has pointed out, it's up 11%, not 44. Fall on my sword, I admit. That's still something I have to struggle with, is a headcount increase of 11% when enrollment is down 7%. I still have to struggle with that. So I apologize for that. On the compound annual growth rate, again, I'll sit down with Sean, I'll look at his numbers, I'll look at my numbers. If his numbers are correct, fine, I'll admit it. But I went with the data that I could access. And so I'm doing my best here, just like you're doing your best. And all 100 people who've either sent us emails or come to talk to us, we're all doing our best. And I'm trying to do what the taxpayers elected me to do. And we're not voting until Thursday. And I appreciate everything I've heard tonight. And I will say that one Board of Education member has reached out to me during this entire process to sit down and try and understand what I'm thinking about and where I'm coming from. One, and I'm going to sit down with you because I'll see you tomorrow night, and we'll do that. And I continue to learn, and I'm a big fan of the school system. I'm just, like I said when I first spoke a week or two ago, I sit back as an average Joe and I scratch my head and I look at the numbers and I got to get through the numbers that I have access to and ask the questions. And I may be proven wrong, and in some things I've been proven wrong. I may be right in some other things. And Sean and I are going to sit down and talk about our numbers too. Who knows? I may be wrong on everything, and we'll see what happens. But I appreciate the interaction.
In a short 11 and a half months, we're going to be right back here.
I know.
And
I know.
And
I don't
when we
wanna-
do,
and just like I said in our meeting with you, I don't want to get to here every year the last 2 weeks.
So
I really
my
want-
offer
I want
is-
the Board of Education and the Board of Finance and the town council to start talking next month about how we can avoid this next year.
my offer is, prior to the meetings, if you have numbers that you're looking at or whatever, let's talk first to make sure that our numbers match up. Because I do think it's so important to start from the same base. We'll draw whatever some assumptions are drawn or whatever afterwards, great. But let's meet prior if you are doing similar calculations so that we can just be sure that we agree on the base numbers.
I did a lot of homework this year. I'll do more next year and I'll start earlier and look forward to it. Thank you.
Eric is super thoughtful and I think it's terrific. And he, thank goodness for that. And he's also super humble, which is a very rare trait in people. And so I just want to say that I really appreciate his thoroughness and the way he approaches particularly budget discussions. I think he's been super helpful. So thank you, Eric. And I know Kim wanted to ask a few more questions. So I'm sorry. if
I just want to
jumped
say I forgive you, Eric. Listen, budgets are hard. I also want to say thank you to everyone that has come here tonight. Budgets are hard. As you can see, there's lots of points of view amongst the 12 of us, and everyone feels passionate in different ways. Just a few points that I want to make. One is the Board of Finance request or guidance to cut the budget, the Board of Ed budget by 500 to 700,000 has been a big point of contention. We did verify it on the video, just for the record, that was said, it does exist. So I see the process, if you read the charter of the town, the Board of Selectmen looks at the budget. They had a 4.67 increase when they approved the budget. Then it went to the Board of Finance. It went down to 4.4%, and now it's in our hands. So I do take the Board of Finance guidance seriously to say, if you can cut the budget, our guidance is to do this. It's an iterative process. Now, my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to make any mistakes, Hugo. The Board of Ed cannot cut the budget legally below what it is this year. So say this year, whatever the budget is, that baseline continues going forward, regardless of this thing that I've learned called CAGR, the compound annual growth rate. I've learned a lot about that. My husband's in finance and Eric's talked about it a lot. Brendan Hayes has talked about it. That's a different number than the baseline that we have this year, which right now is 4.4%, right? So is it true that the legal parameters that you operate under, your statutes are that next year you cannot reduce it from that amount? So this is our baseline, and whatever we vote on and decide on, that will never change, regardless of inflation or whatever numbers are. 4.4%, which we're at now. We don't know if we're going to reduce it or not. We cannot, you cannot come in with a budget lower next year, regardless of what's agreed upon.
So what you're referring to is called MBR, minimum budgetary requirement, right? The top 20 performing school districts in the state had been exempt from MBR. We're amongst those. So we had been. There's been some conversation about it. Has that changed? Has that not changed? I would have to check. But it's not the percent, right? What the MBR pegs the number at that year's operating budget, right? So it doesn't say that
The
each year
aggregate
would have to be
number.
the 4% or
Yeah,
whatever.
the aggregate number.
Right, so
that we
the aggregate number. So to say that the next year's budget can't go below that current year's budget takes into account the operational costs and the increase in salaries, benefits, all those kinds of things, of course. So there is legislation that does require districts to spend at their same level or higher, or if you do spend less, there is a process which actually did hit us once, for a variety of different reasons, there's a process to inform the state and they, grant a waiver, which we did have to do once.
Okay, but the norm is that most Board of Ed budgets don't go down year after year. They usually go up. But you're saying that you might have an exemption, but you're not sure.
But you're
if
right. That is
legally-
definitely that trend. That is the norm for sure
is the
because of
norm,
the
and-
staffing costs and the built-in costs around contracts and benefits and transportation, with 92 give or take % sort of tied up in those operational type costs. It is true that school district budgets do increase year to year.
Yeah, so that's why that number really concerns me in terms of the sustainability going forward of how the budget will grow and, inflation in not raising the mill rate, trying to keep the mill rate low with a baseline budget that we know is going to grow. So if there are costs and reductions that or things that can reduce the budget that can be found, I think we're trying to look out for the overall health and longevity and sustainability of the town. And I understand that it's very worrisome to people that if they hear that there's going to be a reduction, as Eric said, it's not a cut. We're approving the budget. We're just debating and trying to figure out what the reduction would be in the increase. That's a really important distinction that I think when people hear that, they think it's going to be a cut, but it's not. And I guess the last thing I would say is, according to legislative research, I just want to let you and your other board members know, I don't think any Board of Ed members have yet been found and ask them to pay the bill of the overages of the Board of Ed budget. Like you were saying, you don't have director's insurance and like they're going to come after Board of Ed members and things like that. Well, no, you brought it up. I think Ms. Swidell brought it up. And it is, in the statute, but according to legislative research, it's never happened. So I just want you to rest assured that it won't happen, hopefully, based on trends.
Let's cross our fingers on that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
Connecticut is the first time for everything.
So in follow-up to Eric's and Kim's comments, I just want to add, the budget is created as expended for the past few years, but then there's the budget number, the proposed or projected, but there's never an actual of expended amounts. So we're going from budget to budget year. So that number that you're talking about in excess that we get back, it's compounding year after year, even though we get it back, it's growing the budget. And I just want to understand how that works in terms of, for the taxpayer, if they are increasing the budget by a number that's never really spent, then it's a compounding almost interest that piles up year after year.
Yeah. Yeah, the amount that you have not spent is never the number that we then start next year's budget with. Next year's budget start with what was approved this year, right?
Well, it has
So
to
it's-
be because we haven't closed this budget yet, right? So
That's
that's
right.
why what we try to do with our projected is get closer to what we believe the actuals will be at the end of the fiscal year so that we have a more accurate comparison. So we
Right,
try
and I
not
think,
to
I
do.
think that's where we're coming at, if we're having a budget that's here, but the actual then is 500,000 or whatever the number you want to use, less than that. Next year's budget does not start at that reduced amount. It starts at this year's approved amount and goes on top of that.
So
Because that's the number
Yes,
that we cannot not approve.
So what happened then, if you go through the course, I want to make sure I understand you.
Right.
If you go through the course of the year, so then when we close out, let's say we are below the appropriation.
Right.
So we wouldn't be talking about a 4.4, maybe it's a 4.6% increase. But then when we get to the end of the year and close that out, say there is some unspent money, then that returns back to maybe it's a 4.2% increase so as we sort of talk about the difference between a 4.0 or a 4.2 or 4.6, it's just a moment in time based on where we are on this year's budget and what was approved, what we're looking at into next year, because we can't do it actual because we won't have this year's actual until after June 30th.
I understand
Is that- am I
that, but
understanding
what
what
the
you-
starting point for next year is what we approved right now.
Mhm.
Okay, so even if your actual is less than that, but you come in 4% or 3% on top of this year's, it's actually greater than the 3% next year that you come at.
Until the end, when it gets reconciled, where then it would adjust again based on what the actuals are, right?
And
Penny,
that's
I would,
why you're blending,
I
and
would
that's why you
urge you
blend
to
it.
go to- Oh, sorry. I'd urge you to go to page 26 of your budget book because they actually do show the actual expended through FY 2024.
I know.
This year's budget and this year's projected based on where we are. So that's as much as they can give you at this point. So you can't, I understand what you think is happening, but that's actually not happening because they've given you the actuals. All you have to do is say, you know, this is projected. How does that vary from you can either take the 2024 expended and compare it to the 2025 projected. And they do show that difference in the budget book. So, I mean, I just wanted to make that clear because that actually isn't happening. So,
Thank you.
sorry.
No, don't.
Just real quick, I need to go back to this again. The $4 million I think we're talking about is the accumulated surpluses that were returned to the town. Is that the number that you were?
Minus the outliers, yeah. I mean, I don't know what the number is exactly.
Whatever,
but
that,
yeah.
let's say it's 4 million. That's not the impact on taxpayers. The impact on taxpayers, you know, the taxpayers get the benefit of each chunk of that in the following year. It's available to use to reduce the mill rate, right, Ann? And so the only thing that surplus does is it puts off 1 year the benefit to the taxpayers. So instead of $4 million impact on taxpayers, it's closer to $20,000. You know, it's not $4 million. $4 million is what goes back to the taxpayers. It's just that it comes a little late.
It's just collected and held.
What's that?
It's collected, not used
But
and
it
held for
doesn't
the.
accumulate. It just washes back to taxpayers every year. So there's no accumulation. It doesn't build to 4 million. It's pennies.
Rita.
Well, actually, I want to make sure you've all hashed this point out because I have a different point to make. So if there's anyone that has a comment on what's been discussed, you should say that first.
Go. Gotta keep it moving along here.
Well, I mean, have we clarified that point? I didn't want to move on until that's been cleared up, but.
Go ahead. No, Rita, please
So I have a
go.
question actually about, well, because we've been talking here about additional headcount, but I'm just realizing, right, the math interventionist is something that has been at the school. That's been used, and that would actually go away. And so.
That was with an intern.
Grants, right?
Well, no, that was an intern that we had from UConn with a specific skill set who was able to do that for us in the first semester. This semester, he's doing his student teaching, so he's no longer able to do that. After that, he'll get a job as a math teacher somewhere.
Yeah, no, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the service.
Right, so
service
on the intern line, we had him in as an intern and we're able to use him because of his unique skill set. But we're not going, we'll hire another intern next year at the high school, but it's it's unlikely that we're going to have someone with that skill set as the new intern that comes in who's able to do that because he's studying to be a math teacher and we're able to do that. So it's an intern, but we won't have the skill set for the interventionist.
Right, and that's kind of what I'm saying. So I guess the school had a service that was being provided, however, whatever capacity, with an intern, whatever, and that went away. What was the impact? Like, were people, like, what was I always go back to utility. Are people using it? Is there a benefit there? And are we taking away that benefit? If
Sure.
you know what I'm saying? So like.
Yep, I do. So
did
when the
people,
Board of
like, benefit
Education
from
made the
it?
decision. Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, no, it just like, what was the impact of him of leaving? And yeah, what was the reaction of like parents and students?
It was students. So when the Board of Education made the decision to bring that position back into the budget, it was in part due to the data that they analyzed, looking at the utilization of that from the students in the school. And so there were many students that were using that service throughout the course of the day, which in that first semester. And we have heard from students that they miss it and they wish that were back. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I am happy get them for you if it's helpful, but it was significantly utilized as a service from our students. Which is, again, that's that proof of concept of the pilot itself. That's why we set it up and did it the way that we did, to be sure that, we wanted to make sure students will take advantage of that opportunity, and they did.
And if that full 300,000 is in fact reduced, it will definitely affect that potential position.
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone else want to say anything at this time on anything? Dr. Lutzy, anything else? Chairman Hugo, anything else? Anybody?
I'll say one quick thing.
Please.
Just that it is just truly inspiring to serve a community who comes out in support of library and schools.
Mhm.
I know it's a long night, but truly inspiring. And I want to commend all of you for setting the conditions for that to happen, and just share my gratitude with you.
I also just want to thank you guys for the process. I thought,
Rita, you want to say something? Your hand is still
Oh
up.
God, no, I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time with the raising and lowering hands.
All right, excellent.
I just want to thank you guys because we talked about in the beginning, after last year, this year, wanting the process to just get it right. And I appreciate the transparency and the dialogue, and I feel much more connected to you guys this year than I did last year. I don't know, it's because my second year doing it, but no, I really do. I appreciate all the work you guys do, but especially I feel like the process. And I was telling Dr. Lexi just today that I really feel good about the process, regardless of the outcome. I respect and we respect what your roles are here, and I just think that this is the way it's supposed to be done. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for all who stayed late tonight. I know we all have things to do in the morning, so thank you. It's riveting discussion. Okay, if no one has any other comments about anything, and I don't think we do, we'll get a motion to adjourn. Eric made the motion. Kim seconded. All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you, everybody.